Hello and welcome into the KE Report. Chad and Corey here, getting an update from Faraday Copper. Traded on the TSX under the ticker FDY and on the OTCQX under the ticker CPPKF. And we're joined today with the Chief Financial Officer of Faraday Copper, Graham Richardson. And Graham, it's great to get you back on the show. We had introduced the company to our audience here back in June, and you guys have been busy beavers with the drilling. You put out some great drill results back in August and followed them up again just recently on September 24th from the American Eagle area. And you're drilling down into a kind of a new discovery, the Banjo Breccia, and you put out some long intercepts here. Both of these holes that you released were about 117, 118 meters of over 1% copper. And within a larger mineralization package of about 259 meters of 0.68% copper. So pretty wide intercepts of mineralization in this area. It looks like it's tying together into some nearer surface mineralization that could be amenable to another pit. Why don't you break down the significance of some of these recent drill results in the American Eagle area?
Yeah, thanks, Chad and Corey, for having me on again. Exciting times here. We have been busy beavers, as you said. We've been drilling in the American Eagle area. And so what this is it's a large near surface area with a number of breccia and porphyry expressions at surface where we see good copper oxide staining at surface, all of the characteristics from a spectral anomaly and otherwise. And so we've had a rig operating in that as part of our phase 3 drill program since sort of early June, late May. And the two results that you're talking about into the Banjo Breccia are quite exciting. So our discovery hole was released in August. It was 270 meters at 0.64% with 118 at about a percent copper. And that, what we saw there was the grade, width, and depth of that mineralization is very similar to our Mammoth Breccia, which is just to the northwest of that Banjo Breccia. And Mammoth is the sort of largest breccia within our current resource, and it goes into the keel underground at depth. It's this long, vertically continuous mineralized area. And so our thesis in American Eagle area has been that there is a similar vertical continuous mineralized zone there that previous operators didn't adequately test. Most of the drilling in American Eagle was done with long vertical or steeply inclined holes, which was good for testing the sort of tabular nature of the porphyry at depth, but then missed a lot of these breccias. And so Banjo is that one. Our August result was the discovery hole. Earlier this week, we put out the second hole into Banjo, which was 260 meters at 0.6, and within that, 118 at 1.12%. And so that one was 200 and some odd meters offset of the collar point and sort of drilled back across in the opposite direction of the discovery hole and was offset about 25 meters laterally. And so what we're seeing is this large, well-mineralized breccia. Looks a lot like Mammoth in terms of where the grade's being found. We think it'll be amenable to an open pit mining. And so really for us, it's driving the economics as we march forward into an updated resource and study.
So, Graham, just explain to us then the actual location of this Banjo Breccia, because this American Eagle area, it's a main driver for the asset, this overall project with the resource, but where does it lie in relation to all the resources around it?
Yeah, so if anyone's looking at our map and our sort of open pit designs, the big blob in the middle is the Mammoth Breccia, the Mammoth Pit. And so this sits sort of immediately to the southeast between what's the Mammoth Pit and the Bald Pit, and sort of in that gap area. There's a number of breccias we've drilled, the Prada Breccia, the American Eagle Breccia, the Banjo Breccia. It's sort of to date, we've had 12 holes into the area, 10 have been released. All 10 of those have wide intervals of above open pit cutoff grade mineralization. A lot of them we see these high grade cores, Banjo being the most exciting. We are still actively drilling in this area. We expect to be moving down to the jailhouse, post office, and courthouse breccias, which are a little bit closer to Mammoth. And so really what we're seeing come together here is a well mineralized near surface area that looks, smells, and feels a lot like what we've got at Mammoth.
Well, to that point, Graham, you have done a very good job of delineating a number of different pits that could feed into down the road a development scenario. This looks like it could be pulling together into yet a new pit. And then maybe just speak to, for people that are maybe new to this project, all the different pits pulling together into this resource that underneath it, you still have these porphyry areas that could feed it. So there's the breccias at surface, these open pits, and then down at depth, there's an underground component. Maybe to speak to holistically how this is all pulling together.
Yeah, and so I guess the property's known for the near surface breccias. There's over 300 of them that have been mapped at surface. From memory, about 40 of them have had a drill hole or more into them. Only 17 are in our current resource. The breccias are ultimately what support the open pitable resource near surface. And then as you transition down, you get into this sort of porphyry mineralization at depth. So it sort of starts pyrite near surface, increasing to chalcopyrite and bornite at depth. And so the two underground areas are Keel and American Eagle. As part of our 2023 PEA, they were amenable to a underground block cave mining method. And so those two styles of mineralization and sort of two types of mining that we would use to get them. The open pits are what drive the economics, the payback, they're near surface, etc. The underground is what gives you the long mine life and this sort of scale to the project a long term. So a lot of our phase 3 drilling has been focused on the open pit near surface mineralization, both new discoveries like with the Banjo and Area 51, as well as doing drilling sort of in and around below and call it step out holes on the current resource, ultimately targeting an increase in throughput and an increase in the scale of the project. But as we look across the property, it's a 73 square kilometer land package. Over 90% of the drilling has been conducted within this sort of 3 square kilometer area. So we have a number of other targets stepping out further from the resource area that are ultimately looking to build out on that pipeline of exploration targets, ultimately to convert into a resource and hopefully one day into a reserve.
So before we get into some of these other targets, just following up on this Banjo Breccia, with these long intercepts of over 1% copper, is this the highest grade area that you've seen?
It's definitely the best result we've had out of our phase 3 drilling in terms of grade width intercept. The only reason I paused there is as part of our phase 2 drilling, we hit a massive sulfide right below our Copper Prince pit slash breccia, where we hit 15 meters at 11% copper and elevated precious metals. And my mental math isn't quick enough to tell me which one is better, but either way, it's the most exciting result we've had, and we're very excited on the size. It's not just the grade, it's the over 100 meters. From a engineering standpoint, engineers love when you get these wide intervals of mineralization because those are blocks that you can take out. You don't have to selectively mine them.
Yeah, even the 269 meters of 0.64% copper is
Yep.
still wide mineable widths. And it's interesting that you have also beefed up the phase 3 drill program. So speaking of phase 3, I think you were initially slated to do around 20,000 meters. Could you maybe walk us through where things are at in that process and that you may be upsizing the program by adding another rig?
Yeah, absolutely. So we initially had penned it as a 20,000 meter drill program. We're about 15,000 meters into it, sort of as of yesterday, I believe. We just mobilized the second drill rig to the site. It is busy being walked up to the RUM area to start testing that. Just for your listeners' benefit, that area is about a kilometer to the northeast of the current resource area. And so that second rig is going to be testing areas outside of the American Eagle area, focused on generative new targets that have previously not been drill tested, as well as doing some step out in and around the current resource area. So we will have 2 rigs operating on site, and we expect 20,000, that it'll be increased beyond that. How much will depend on the success of the drill program over the coming months.
How are you going to go about testing some of these other targets then? Because as much as the company is driven by this main kind of resource area, as you said, a lot of other targets to be drilled and you're going after them. So how do you go about testing them? What do you even consider a success in initial drill holes?
So I guess to your question, Corey, it's important to kind of continuously be building out this exploration triangle. And for those that are familiar, at the top you have a mineral reserve that's been economically proven. You go down resource, advanced targets, identified, and generative targets. And so we've been doing a lot of generative work across the property with VTEM, ZTEM, spectral, shooting XRF guns over top of surface anomalies and expressions to really be building out that area. And so as of today, I think we have 33 high priority targets across the property. Of those, you're looking at kind of 15 of them are at that early stage generative targets. 7 are identified advanced targets, and you continue to move up into your resource targets. And so ultimately, the generative targets are being informed by that sort of grassroots exploration activity where you're collecting data, coming up with a thesis, and then ultimately you either need to move that target up and drill test it, or you've decided that it's a low priority and you're moving it out. So as we look across our triangle, the sort of the upcoming targets for us are one, the Rum area, as I just mentioned. We'll be testing Horse Camp probably early in the new year, which is along the western breccia trend on the property. And then we'll as well have some follow-up drilling into Area 51. So it's about using the empirical information that we're able to gather, developing a thesis and concept, testing that thesis and concept, and where it works, it'll be moved up and drilling will be planned. Where it doesn't work, the target will get tossed out, and it's important that we, continue to build that feeder of generative targets. So Rum was identified early on as a target for us, and with the notice of intent that was approved sort of back in May of this year, we're now able to get up there and do the drill testing.
Well, Graham, let's also bring in Area 51. You mentioned it would be getting follow-up work. And the drill it to kill it mentality, this is one where you drilled it and you want to go back for more. So remind people it's a relatively newer discovery. It's kind of south of the main area that you've been drilling, but this Area 51 discovery showing promise. What's the plan here to follow up with the drilling?
Yeah, so it's about a 400 by 400 meter area mapped at surface with about a dozen breccias and porphyry expressions. So the first hole that we drilled into it was into what's called the star-shaped breccia, and it hit plus 70 meters at sort of 0.37% copper, and again you get these higher grade 25 meters at almost 0.8%, very near surface, and it's sort of this clustering of breccias and porphyries. It's well above our cutoff grade, so we had put 13 holes into the area so far. The geologists have been busy sort of interpreting that, taking it away, updating understanding. And so we've never really drill tested it at depth. As part of the ongoing drilling, we are planning some deeper holes to really understand the feeder system of this. So I think, if you look at the Mammoth breccia, underneath it is keel, underground, or porphyry, and that's what fed it. When we're looking at the Banjo breccia, what's underneath it is the American Eagle underground. That's what fed it. And so, trying to update our interpretation is where's the feeder system of Area 51? The mineralization that we intercepted there is very near surface, like 50, 100 meters subsurface. And so trying to develop a thesis that we can ultimately test of where is that coming from? And then looking to go drill some follow-up holes at depth to see if we can chase that grade down.
So, Graham, all this drilling underway and some of the drill results that we've already seen, all I assume play into updating the resource. The last time we had economics or a resource announced was back in May of 2023. When are you going to update that resource and even the economics? When would you cut off the drilling for that?
Yeah, so I think the plan will be, as is typical, we do a little bit of a Christmas shutdown for the holidays. And so the drill cutoff will coincide with that. And then sort of assay cutoff in early January or mid-January, depending on sort of what the results are and where they're coming from. All that feeding into an updated resource and PEA that we expect to release in the first half of next year. And what we're targeting is a increase in throughput. We released some MET results earlier this year that sort of showed that we could increase the grind size from 190 microns up to 350 microns. That helps us to unlock the scale of the project from 30,000 ton per day mill to 40, 45, 50,000 ton per day mill. It also confirmed some better oxide recoveries, gold deportment into concentrate. So ultimately taking that MET work, which gives us a lot of economic levers that we can pull, as well as I think it'll be over 30,000 meters of incremental drilling from when the last resource, and wrapping that up into an updated resource and PEA that'll come out, yeah, sort of first half. I think whether it's a resource followed by a PEA or a combined resource and PEA is still to be determined and somewhat drill bit dependent, but ultimately those are the main catalysts, the ongoing drilling and then updated technical studies in the first half of next year to demonstrate the scale and value of this project.
All right, Graham, and you got a lot going on as a company. You got met work going on. You're looking at some of these different de-risking activities to build towards that updated PEA. You got a ton of drilling going on, both around the known mineralization and stepping out, testing new targets. What is the budget for this phase 3 program, and what kind of money do you have in the treasury to keep feeding the work programs as you move forward?
Yeah, so I guess, as of the end of June, we had 26 million Canadian sitting in the bank. We spend roughly, $4 or $5 million a quarter, depending on the sort of scale of activity and otherwise. So you can kind of look at that and say, well, from June 30th, they had about 5 quarters worth of treasury available, and that includes us running drilling at the same time. So at this point, we're sort of fully funded for the 20,000-meter phase three and beyond, as well as delivery of the MRE and PEA into next year. And so we don't anticipate doing any financing anytime soon. And so that's the sort of game plan. We probably got 5 or 6 quarters of treasury available to us, depending on the scale and speed with which we like to spend the money. As a CFO, you always need to be mindful of, when those financing windows open, you want to take them. You never want to find yourself reactive and raising at a depressed price or in a bad market. But given where we are today and where we're trading, I think that we're going to continue to de-risk, to add value to the project, and demonstrate that we're worth a lot more than we are today.
All right, Graham. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there for today, but a great update on all the drilling going on the property and some of the key milestones coming down the pipeline for next year. And if people want to follow along with the news flow at Faraday Copper, definitely click on the link below this interview. It takes you right over to the company website, straight to the news section, so you too can follow along as more drill results are released to the market. Graham, keep us posted on any key news. We'll get you back on for an update, and looking forward to our next conversation.
Great. Thanks so much, Chad. Thanks, Corey, for having me.